Right, good morning, students. It's 11 o'clock, just after 11. Let us just get going. Let us just please settle some of the preliminaries first. First of all, please, guys, ensure that you have got and completed the attendance register, and at the end of the meeting, that you must please complete our feedback form. And then also the notes has been posted during the course of the week already. And once again, just a normal reminder that it is in your best interest to download the notes, print it out, and it will be better for you in class and to sit in so that you know exactly what we are doing and you can follow them on your notes. So if there are any activities that you need to do, then you can just follow on that. Right, without any further ado, we are into our lectures for our lecture of today, which is marked lecture number 4. And in today's lecture, we are going to focus on the format of your financial statements. And as you know, it is required of you for the course FAC1502 that you must be able to do the 3 financial statements that apply to this course, which means that you must know how to do a statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income, a statement of changes in equity, and a statement of financial position. Absolutely important for this course that you know how to handle those financial statements. We are back into our notes now. So the first financial statements that we are focusing on is the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. And remember, the purpose of this statement is to calculate what is the profit for the year. This statement starts off with revenue. So you must state what is the revenue. The revenue, you must show what is the calculation for revenue. So revenue is equal to the sales amount minus the sales returns minus the settlement discount granted, and that will give you an answer then for your revenue. So from your question paper, put in the amounts for sales minus the amount for sales returns minus the amount for settlement discount granted, and that is your net sales. Then you must calculate your cost of sales. Now you must know the story, what is cost of sales. Cost of sales consists of the following. It is the opening inventory. Opening inventory is the value of your stock at the beginning of the financial year. To that, you will add your net purchases. So when we talk about net purchases again, purchases or net purchases would be the purchases minus the purchases returns minus the settlement discount received. That is your net purchases. Then you add any other expenses that you may incur in getting the stock to you, all your transport costs. When you have purchased any stock and you had to deliver that stuff now, or you had to bring it now into your store, that is part of your cost of sales. So it can consist of import duties or carriage on purchases or freight on purchases. Any expense that you will incur in getting the stock to you, that will be part there of your cost of sales. So if there's import duties, we will add that. If you've got carriage on purchases, you will add that. And you subtract your closing inventory. Closing inventory must be subtracted. And that is your calculation for cost of sales. What you will do that is that you will put that in a block. Put that then in a block. And that will give you your calculation of cost of sales. So just to summarize all of that again. To calculate cost of sales is equal to the opening inventory plus the purchases, plus the import duties if there is, plus carriage on purchases if there is, plus freight on purchases if there is, minus the closing inventory. That calculation in that block will give you the amount of cost of sales that you will indicate now in your column for cost of sales. And then you say revenue minus your cost of sales is going to give you the gross profit. So that is your gross profit. So gross profit calculation, you must get your revenue minus your cost of sales, and that will then be your gross profit. So that is the first section then of your statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income. Just to make sure that you are okay with this and that calculation, I want you to take a look at the activity on page 3 of your notes. Page 3 of your notes, there is information given to you. A pre-adjustment trial balance of Fallon Traders is given to you. I want you to take that information into account and complete for me the statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income up to the calculation of the gross profit. Let's see if you can handle that for me, please. So this statement is then going to start with revenue. So your first entry there would be for revenue. Calculate for me what is the revenue amount. And complete for me that section, that question of that statement up until the calculation of the gross profit. Right, students, we are going to take a look at the solution and just see how did you do with that section up to the calculation of the gross profit then. So you need to show the calculation of your revenue. Your revenue is then the amount of 444,000, which is the sales amount, minus the sales returns. Your sales returns was the amount of 4,600 Rand, minus your settlement discount allowed or settlement discount granted of 800 Rand, and that will give you a net amount then of your sales or your revenue. And your revenue is therefore the amount now of 438,600 Rand. Revenue is then your sales minus your sales returns minus your settlement discount granted. Remember, sometimes they will also call this account settlement discount allowed. Settlement discount allowed, settlement discount granted is the same thing. Your cost of sales, you will indicate the value of your cost of sales. Cost of sales is equal to, and you must know the story, cost of sales is your opening inventory. And your opening inventory is the value of your inventory on, I'm sorry, on the first day. Sorry guys, on the first day of the financial year. And the value of inventory on the first day of the financial year was 55,000 Rand. So if you go on top there in your under your balance sheet account section, you will see there that the inventory on the 1st of March was indicated as 55,000 Rand. To that, you are going to add your purchases now, the purchases for the financial year, and your purchases. Once again, we are looking for our net purchases. Our net purchases would be the purchases of 223,040 minus your purchases returns. Go to your purchases returns, which was the amount of 1,200 Rand, minus your settlement discount received of 340 Rand. And that will give you net purchases then. And your net purchases is then the amount of 221,500. That is your purchases. We are still busy with our calculation of cost of sales. Cost of sales is equal to the opening inventory plus the purchases plus the carriage on purchases if there is. And in this question, there is carriage on purchases. And your carriage on purchases, as indicated in your trial balance, carriage on purchases is the amount then of 4,300 Rand. You bring into account now your closing inventory that must be subtracted. This is your closing inventory. And your closing inventory, the amount of closing inventory is always disclosed as part of your additional information. So go to your additional information and then you will see they tell you the value of your inventory on the 29th of February 2020, which is on the last day of the financial year. We call that our closing inventory and it must be subtracted. So you put it now in brackets. The amount is 28,300 Rand. You put the amount in brackets because it must be subtracted. So our cost of sales consists of those 4 items now. It is the opening inventory plus the purchases plus the carriage on purchases minus the closing inventory. You block that, calculate now that, and you will get your cost of sales amount then 55,000 plus 221,500 plus the 4,300 of carriage on purchases minus the closing inventory of 28,300 Rand, and that will give you then cost of sales amount 252,500. And that will give you the solution of your first section then of your statement. That is the calculation then of your gross profit. And your gross profit amount then will then be the revenue of 438,600 minus the cost of sales of 252,500, and that will give you a gross profit of 186,100 Rand. 186,100, and that is your statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income up until the calculation of the gross profit. Any queries up to this stage? I see nothing, so I assume that all of you guys are okay. And I just want to answer a question here to Janine. Janine, if you are, just want to see if there's other question. Right. Janine, just to answer your question, if you are faced with a question like this question now, where they ask you to do the financial statements, you always need to see whether you are working with a periodic or the perpetual system. So you go to the information that is supplied to you. In your list of accounts, if you see purchases is one of your accounts, then you know you are dealing with the periodic inventory system. If you go to your nominal accounts and you see there is an account called cost of sales, then you are sure that you are working with a perpetual inventory system. Those are the two accounts that you look for in your list of accounts. So in this case, you will see that there's purchases. And because it is purchases, then you know we are dealing with the periodic inventory system. So this question is the format that I'm giving to you now is an example of a question of a business that uses the periodic inventory system. All right, guys, back onto our notes now. Tiraj, I don't know whether you want me just to repeat what I have said now, but let me just repeat that. I'm saying that if you are faced with a question where you must do the financial statements, you must look whether you are dealing with a periodic or a perpetual inventory system. And the two accounts that you are look for in the information supplied to you would be the following. Look if there is in the list of accounts an account called purchases. If there is an account called purchases, then you are dealing with the periodic inventory system. In your list of accounts, if they give you the name of the account, cost of sales, then you are dealing with the perpetual inventory system. Right, we are back onto our notes. And in the notes now, back onto the format. And we are discussing the format now on page 1. So we have come as far as the gross profit is concerned. So now we are going to take a look at our next heading is called other income. So in your question from your trial balance, from your list of accounts, you must now look for any other income that you have. So it would be rent income, it can be profit on sale of asset, credit losses recovered, interest on fixed deposit. You list all of these accounts individually. You block that. Put it in a block. You add it up. And if you add it up, that will be the total then of other income. So if the question give you a list of accounts or they give you a trial balance, remember income accounts must have credit balances. So if you are looking for your income accounts, go to your trial balance, go to your nominal accounts, and your income accounts will have credit balances. So if you take a look at this activity over here, you've got credit balances for sales, purchases, returns. But that was all calculated within the gross profit. We used those totals already. The next account with a credit balance is rent income. The next account with a credit balance is the 340 Rand for settlement discount received. But settlement discount received, we have used in the calculation of the cost of sales. Our next account with a credit balance is interest on fixed deposit. So we have only got two income accounts here. So back to the format now. If you are now going to speak about your other income will then only consist in this exercise of two items there. Remember, income accounts has got credit balances. So from your list of accounts or from your trial balance, you are looking for nominal accounts with credit balances because that is your income. Right, we continue still with the statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income. The next heading is called distribution, administrative, and other expenses. So now we're going to take care of our expenses. But our expenses falls under two categories, okay? Whenever we are dealing with expenses, our expenses will consist of two categories. We put all our expenses into two categories. We get distribution, administrative, and other expenses. And we also will get finance costs. So under your finance costs will go your interest expenses, whether it is interest on loans or interest on outstanding trade payables accounts or interest on overdraft. So finance cost is for all your interest. All your other items falls under distribution, administrative, and other expenses. Okay. So our expenses, we're going to deal now with our expenses. And when we deal with our expenses, we will now have two categories: interest on loan or interest on our overdraft. That will form part of my finance cost, and all the other expenses will fall under distribution, administrative, and other expenses. So we are back onto the format in your notes on page 1 now. Your heading is now distribution, administrative, and other expenses. And you list now all the expenses that the business may have. You are working from the trial balance. You list all of the expenses that will be there in your exercise. You block all of them, put them into a block. And that will then be the summary of all my distribution, administrative, and other expenses. You add them up. And that will be the sum of all my distribution, administrative, and other expenses. Then you go to your finance cost. Go to your finance cost. And under your finance cost, you look for if there are any interest on loans, whether there are any interest on overdrafts, add that up, put that in a block for finance cost, and that will give you the total of finance cost. You put that in brackets because the finance cost is an expense that must be subtracted. And your final answer in the statement is then called the net profit or the loss for the year. You first calculate what is the amount for the year. So let me just highlight this now. You take your gross profit. You add your heading for other income. You subtract your distribution, administrative, and other expenses. You subtract your finance costs. And the answer that you will get over here, first get your answer. That is the answer to this statement. If this answer is positive, if it is a plus, then you will label it as the net profit for the year. So if your answer is positive, then you will label it as the net profit for the year. If, however, your answer is a negative amount, then you will label this then as the net loss for the year. So just to summarize now, we are going to complete now this statement now. We are going to bring into account the income and the expenses. Income appear on the credit side of your trial balance because all income accounts has got credit balances. Your expenses appears on the debit side of your nominal accounts. So you will have a heading for distribution, administrative, and other expenses, and a heading for finance costs. Finance cost is only for your interest. Everything else goes under distribution, administrative, and other expenses. You block, you add up all your distribution, administrative, and other expenses. You add up your finance costs. You calculate the profit or the loss for the year. First, calculate the amount, which is then the gross profit, plus other income, minus distribution, administrative, and other expenses, minus the finance cost, and you will get an answer. This answer, if it is positive, you will label it as the net profit for the year. If your answer is negative, you will label it as the net loss for the year. So I want you now to take all the other information now into account, and please complete now for me the statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income.
Hi students, I don't want to interrupt in your learning time. I posted a link there for you to follow for the My Modules website, and I've posted an email address that Mr. Lee shared in the very first session. If you're struggling with notes. But I just want to remind you that he does it as a courtesy and all the notes are uploaded there. If you follow that link and you register, you will be able to access everything. And also, if you complete the electronic attendance register, we also send that list of numbers through to him for the email. If you don't complete it, then your number also won't be there. So we want you to have everything, but if you complete that My Modules process, you can go back to the chats afterwards, then you will be able to access everything. Even if you're from another region, it doesn't matter. It is for everybody the resource. So if you can't get notes in that, this is not the place, but I've reposted the email and I've reposted the process that you need to follow. So once again, it is not Mr. Lesh's duty to see that you have the notes. It is a favor to you. He's kind enough to do it. That is an email address that you can send and request notes from him. And please, people, when you do use it, just be respectable about the times and what your demands are of the person answering. Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Claudine.
Oh, Mr. Lesh, I just reposted that email address for them that you put in the first session. Because I see
Okay,
so
it's
many
fine.
of them are asking for notes. So
Yeah,
that
the
you can
problem
sort
is,
them out in the meantime. But once they join that regional portal, they'll be good to go.
okay, no,
That they must just know they are not excluded because they at another office. It doesn't matter. They must just join there. So, okay, they're happy now. I don't want them to be unhappy and I don't want to interfere. Go on.
okay, thank you. Ursula, just a solution there or a solution to your question. Do you also deduct the interest on loan? Interest on loan is also an expense to the business, must be deducted, but it falls under the category of finance costs. But I think we are ready to go for the solution then. Right, so I am taking it from our next heading. After you calculated the gross profit, your next heading is then called other income. Under your other income, we have identified just two income accounts, if you can recall from earlier. We have got an income account called rent income, which amounted to 24,000 Rand. So the amount for rent income will be 24,000 Rand. And our next account that we have identified here as part of our income accounts was the account interest on fixed deposit. And our interest on fixed deposit amounted to 12,000 Rand. Those are our only income accounts that we do have. You put that now in a block. and that will give you other income then of 36,000 Rand. Other income therefore will amount then to 36,000 Rand. Our next heading is called Distribution, Administrative and Other Expenses. Our next heading, Distribution, Administrative and Other Expenses. Once again, guys, it is important. This is a format. The format of your financial statements is a format that everybody must abide by. So don't come up with your own headings. This is the format, and your heading must be distribution, administrative, and other expenses, not anything else. Now I'm going to list down all my expenses here. And my expenses, my distribution, administrative, and other expenses, the following. I'm going down my list. Salaries and wages. And the amount for salaries and wages is the amount of 123,000 Rand. My next expense, if I go down my list, is my telephone expense. And my telephone for the financial year amounted to telephone. And my telephone expense is the amount of 9,600. My next expense is interest on loan, but interest on loan is not part of my distribution, administrative, and other expenses. I'm not going to indicate that. My next expense, if I go down in my list of accounts, my next expense is settlement discount allowed. But remember, settlement discount allowed is one of the expenses that we brought into account, or we took that into account when we did the calculation of cost of sales. So the next one will be bank charges. Your expense for bank charges. Bank charges amount is the amount of 2,400 Rand. I've got stationery, insurance, and advertising as my next set of expenses. I've got stationery, my next expense will be insurance. My next expense, I've got 3 more expenses for this business, and the last one there is advertising. My stationery expense amounted to stationery amounted to 3,600. My insurance expense is the amount of 8,400 Rand. And my advertising expense is the amount of 6,500 Rand. That will take care of all my distribution, administrative, and other expenses. I will block them, group them together, and if I group them together, my distribution, administrative, and other expenses in total, if I add all of that up, will amount to 153,500 Rand. I bring into account now my finance cost, next heading, after distribution, administrative, and other expenses. My next heading would be finance cost. Because I had one expense here that will fall under the category of finance costs, and that was my expense called interest on loan. My interest on loan expense has amounted to 16,800. 16,800 is my interest on loan. I will block that. And that will give me total amount then of finance cost. And my finance cost consists only of the one item, which is 16,800 Rand. I'm calculating now my final amount then of my statement, and the final amount of the statement will be equal to my gross profit of 186,100 plus my other income of 36,000 Rand minus my distribution, administrative, and other expenses of 153,500 minus my finance cost of 16,800 Rand, and that will give me an answer, and my answer is 51,800 Rand, and I will label that as, because it is a positive amount, I will label that as the net profit for the year. Net profit for the year, that is my solution there, and my net profit for the year amounted then to 51,800 Rand. Right. Any queries? Right. Abdullah, I'm going to speak to your question right now. Ashila is saying, please go through that again. Got something wrong in the totals, right? Okay, Ursula, let us just quickly sort you out. Your salaries and wages is 123,000. Your telephone is 9,600. I've got 2,400 Rand for bank charges. I've got 3,600 Rand for stationery. I've got 8,400 Rand for insurance. And I have got 6,500 Rand for my advertising. And that will give me a total of 153,500. If I must now calculate the solution of my statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income, I take my gross profit. I'm now just working with the totals. Gross profit, 186,100 plus my other income of 36,000 Rand minus distribution, administrative and other expenses of 153,500. And I subtract now my finance cost of 16,800, and that will give me an amount of 51,800 Rand, and that 51,800 is then called my net profit for the year. Right, Ursula had got her profits story sorted out. Timothy, I don't understand the question. Oh, okay. Okay, now I come down to Abdullah's question. Abdullah, your carriage on purchases is part of your cost of sales calculation. Just say to you, just think about the following now. If we are saying you are buying stock for 1,000 Rand, but it costs you 200 Rand to transport the items now from wherever you have purchased it to your store. That 200 Rand expense, you call that carriage on purchases. But carriage on purchases is part of the cost of sales. Even though you paid 1,000 Rand for the item, the 200 Rand must be added to the cost of the sales, and that is why you can basically say you bought the stuff then for 1,200 Rand. That is why carriage on purchases is part of your cost of sales calculation. It is an expense, but we show it under the cost of sales calculation. Then you had a question earlier about the carriage on sales. Carriage on sales is a normal expense. Carriage on sales appears under distribution, administrative, and other expenses. Any queries on that, guys? We are done now with the statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income. And remember now, you need to practice that format so that you can get used to the way it is done. Back to our notes now. And in your notes, I am on page 2 of your notes. And the next financial statement that we are going to focus on is called our statement of changes in equity. Now, your statement of changes in equity is telling you the reason why we are doing this statement is to show to you, or you must show how the capital has changed from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. We want to know what is the value of capital at the beginning of the year and what is the value of capital at the end of the financial year. So your statement of changes in equity starts with capital, the balance at the beginning of the year. Then we want to know whether there has been any movements. Now, movements will refer to any increases or decreases to the capital at the beginning of the year. So, if your capital balance at the beginning of the year was 100,000 Rand, and the owner during the course of the year has contributed another 100,000 Rand, then that will then fall under the movements. So the statement will start with capital, then any increases or decreases, you must indicate that, increases to the capital during the course of the year. Any profits that were made, you add, and if the business has made a loss, you subtract the loss. Now, in our case, we have calculated a profit. Remember now, this is the information that comes from the statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income. If you've made a profit, add it onto capital. If you've made a loss, it must be subtracted. Next category, you subtract your drawings, and your answer is then called the capital balance at the end of the year. So to summarize your statement of changes in equity, in your statement of changes in equity, we are focusing on capital. We want to know what is the opening balance of capital, whether there's been any additions to capital, whether the business has made a profit, and if we made a profit, it will increase your capital. If we made a loss, it will decrease your capital. Subtract your drawings, because remember, the drawings will decrease the capital. It will decrease your equity. And your final answer is then called your capital balance at the end of the year. And that is your, that will give you then your solution or the answer then to your second statement, which is then the statement of changes in equity. I want you to take this question now and complete for me the statement of changes in equity. So back to your notes or your answer sheets, and you complete then for me the statement of changes in equity. Okay, Timothy, I'm going to give you an example now of the movements when we get there. Right, students, let us just take a look at the statement now. Your statement of changes in equity, you must start with your capital balance at the beginning of the year. And nowhere in our question do we have information that there has been any increases or decreases to the capital during the course of the year, and therefore the capital balance at the beginning of the year is as given 280,000 rand. 280,000 rand, that is the amount for capital in your trial balance. On the next line, you will indicate if there was any movements. So in this question, there was no movements. So you can either leave it blank, or so you can have movements there and you will indicate the answer as nothing, or you can leave it out completely. No need for you to complete that one because there was no movements. Timothy, I will explain to you now again and give you an example of the movements. Then you must indicate you must bring into account the profit for the year. And our profit for the year that we have calculated in the statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income, the profit for the year is coming from your statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income, and that amounted to 51,800 rand. You bring into account the drawings then for the year, and the drawings for the year as indicated in your statement or in your list of accounts, you will see there is the drawings for the year, and the drawings for the year amounted to 20,000 rand to be subtracted. Your final answer for this statement is called the capital, the balance at the end of the year. So we are looking for the balance at the end of the year. And the balance at the end of the year is then the sum of those balances. You will add it up. So it will be 280,000 rand plus 51,800 minus the 20,000 rand. And that will give you an answer of 311,000. 311,800 rand, and that is then the balance of your capital account. The value of capital at the end of the year will then be 311,800 rand. So in your statement of changes in equity, you must then just indicate what has happened to your capital. So the capital balance at the beginning of the year was 280,000 rand. The movements there, in this case, there's no movements. The profit for the year, 51,800 minus the drawings of 20,000. The profit for the year has been calculated in your statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income, and that will give you a balance of capital at the end of the financial year. Come back to Timothy's question, I'm going to give you an example now of what has happened now if we do have movements. So I'm going to give you now information, and the first set of information is I'm going to give you a trial balance at or on the 31st of December 2019, which is the end of the financial year. And if I tell you that in my trial balance on the 31st of December 2019, one of the accounts that I've got there is capital, and the capital has got a balance of, say, 260,000 Rand. Then under my additional information, I will have the following. I will state the following. Number one, the owner in his capital in the business and contributed a further 60,000 Rand on the 1st of September 2019. Okay, so how are we now going to account for this now? If I ask you now, complete now for me the statement of changes in equity. Now you must understand that if I am now going to do the statement of changes in equity, this is now for the year ended the 31st of December, right? From the information, let us just interrogate this quickly. In your trial balance, there is a capital balance, but this is the capital balance at the end of the year. The information tells you that the owner gave another 60,000 Rand now, and he contributed that 60,000 Rand during the course of the year. Now, this 260,000 Rand is the balance at the end of the year. So if I must now do my statement of changes in equity, my capital balance at the beginning of the year, you must have a balance of 200,000 Rand at the beginning of the year. And then there was a movement, and the movement will speak about additional capital or additional contribution. And your additional contribution is a 60,000 Rand. And that is how you will account for that then in your statement of changes in equity. When we talk about movements, we are referring to any increases or decreases to the capital during the course of the year. If something like this should happen, it will, or if there was any increases or decreases, it will be displayed in your additional information. I hope that is clear, Timothy. Sibasiso asked the following: in our exam, will they penalize us twice if you get an incorrect value for the statement of profit and loss and then substitute the value in your statement of changes in equity? Right. So that is the beauty about accounting. If you have made a mistake now, if you have made a mistake in your statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income, and you have got a wrong amount there, if you take your wrong amount and you post to your statement of changes in equity, you will still get full marks. You will only lose the marks in the statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income, but in your statement of changes in equity, you will still get the full marks, because what we are saying when we mark your stuff is that we work with the candidate's wrong answers. So the process that you have followed is correct, and that is why in your statement of changes in equity, you will still get the full marks. You will lose the mark in the statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income, but full marks in your statement of changes in equity. Right. I think all the questions has been answered, guys. We are moving on to, even with the new online exams, will this also be accommodated? Right. When we speak about the online exams, if you get a question where they ask you, calculate the, perhaps there was a question on the profit, and then they ask you now, calculate the capital balance at the end of the year, as if you now had to do a statement of changes in equity. The question that you will get will be as follows. The question will state, assume the profit for the year amounted to 50,000 Rand. And then they will make an assumption as to what the profit for the year is. So they basically give you the profit for the year, and then you must work with that to calculate the capital balance at the end of the year. All good? But remember, you guys will not be penalized for anything like that, because we apply positive marking. As long as the stuff is right, then there's no problem. Right, we are on to our next financial statement. Right, back to your information, back to your activity, and we are on page 2 now, and we are looking at the format of the statement of financial position. Statement of financial position, this is the third financial statement that we are dealing with here. In this financial statement, we will show all our assets, all our equity accounts, and all our liabilities. Let us first take a look at the assets. So your heading is assets, and then we will have non-current assets first. Non-current assets consist of property, plant, and equipment, and other financial assets. Under your other financial assets will fall fixed deposits and investments. Under property, plant, and equipment will fall your buildings, your land, your equipment, your machinery, your furniture, and your vehicles will fall under property, plant, and equipment. Once again, guys, don't come with your own headings. These are the headings that we do have here. So when we speak about property, plant, and equipment, and in the notes, I've given you guys an explanation there. Note number 1, I say property, plant, and equipment consist of land and buildings, and that must be shown at the cost price. Machinery, equipment, vehicles, furniture, shelving, whatever you get, you show that at the carrying value. Now, carrying value is cost price minus accumulated depreciation. I will explain more on this in our next lecture when we are going to discuss adjustments and additional information. So, property, plant, and equipment, add all your property, plant, and equipment together with your other financial assets. You take that, you put that in a block, and you add that, and that will give you your total amount of non-current assets. Then you move on to your current assets. Your current assets consist of 4 categories: inventory, trade and other receivables, prepaid expenses, and cash and cash equivalents. Your inventory is the value of your trading stock at the end of the financial year, plus if you have got any other additional information, other additional inventory on hand, because you may have stationery or packing material on hand at the end of the year. But stationery and packing material on hand, that will be part of the adjustments that I will explain to you guys in our next session. Your next heading is your trade and other receivables. I've got it for you under number 3. Trade and other receivables consist of your trade receivables minus allowance for credit losses plus accrued income. Allowance for credit losses and accrued income, I will also explain to you guys in our next session, which will deal with adjustments and additional information. So at this point in time, just remember that our trade receivables consist of your trade receivables minus your allowance for credit losses plus your accrued income. Don't worry too much about that now. We will speak about that in our next session. Also, prepaid expenses. I will also explain that to you in our next session. The last category of current assets is your cash and cash equivalents. Cash and cash equivalents consist of your bank, your petty cash, and your cash float. Those items, you block them together, add that up, and that will give you your total amount of current assets. Your next category is you're going to calculate your total assets now. Total assets will now be your non-current plus your current. That is going to give you your total assets, which is the top part of your statement of financial position. Okay, the top part where you must calculate what is your assets. I want you to go back to the activity that we're with now, the books of Fallon traders. I want you to take that information into account and complete for me the statement of financial position up until the assets. Just indicate there for me the assets there in that question. Right, guys. Unfortunately, we will just have to get going because I want to finish all of this. So I cannot give you an opportunity still to finish that. I hope that you have finished this already or got going with that. So in our statement of financial position, we will start at the top section. We will indicate our assets. Under your assets, you will indicate now, first of all, your non-current assets. Your non-current assets will consist of, we have got here in this section, we have got property, plant, and equipment. So you will indicate property, plant, and equipment. You show the calculation of your property, plant, and equipment in brackets. We have got land and buildings of 360,000. We have got equipment of 90,000. And we have got vehicles here of 185,000. And that will give me my total property, plant, and equipment, 185,000 plus 90,000 plus a further 360,000. My property, plant, and equipment is therefore the amount of, just get hold of this right here. Property, plant, and equipment, indicate your amount here as 635,000 Rand. Also under your category of non-current assets will appear your fixed deposit. And our fixed deposit amount is a fixed deposit. We've got a fixed deposit of 60,000 Rand. We will block that, giving us non-current assets then of 695,000 Rand. Your next heading will then be for your current assets. Under your current assets, there are 4 categories then of your current assets. The first category that we will have is our inventory. And your inventory, the value of our inventory is the closing stock, which we got in our additional information. And your inventory is the amount of 28,300 Rand. We have also got our next heading that deals with trade and other receivables. Remember, guys, you must know the format. It's trade and other receivables. And your trade and other receivables will consist then of your trade receivable amounts, which is your customers that is owing you money. And from our question, trade receivables amounted to 28,000 Rand. That was our debtors there, 28,000 Rand. We have also got our last category here, because in this question there's no prepaid expenses. We do have cash and cash equivalents. And your cash and cash equivalents is then the amount of your bank only in this activity. And the bank in this activity is 43,500 Rand. You block all of that. That will give you your amount of current assets. So you add up your current assets. It's the 28,300 plus the 28,000 Rand plus a further 43,500 Rand, and that will give you 99,800 Rand being your amount then of your current assets. Your total amount of your assets now, which is now the sum of your current assets and your non-current assets, that will be total assets. And your total assets, if you add that now up, which is then also the solution to the top section, which will be then the 695,000 plus the 99,800, and that will give you an amount of 794,800 Rand. 794,800 Rand, and that is the top part of your statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income. Just one. 794,800. Right. Guys, just due to some time constraints, I'm not going to explain the other part now. We are just going to continue. So I'm just going to continue with the activity and also then explain now the bottom section. The bottom section of your statement now is called equity and liabilities. Equity and liabilities. Which is the bottom section of your statement. Your equity and liabilities. We first of all take a look at equity. What is the value of your equity? Your equity consists only of the capital. So you must have a heading there for capital. And the capital amount has been calculated in your statement of changes in equity. So capital, you show the amount as calculated in your statement of changes in equity, because in your statement of changes in equity, remember, there you had to calculate what was the value of your capital at the end of the year, and we had seen that the capital at the end of the year was the amount of 311,800 Rand. You block that. And that will give you the value of equity. So your equity consists only of capital, and your equity amount is 311,800 Rand. Now we are going to focus on our liabilities. We're going to focus on our liabilities. We get two kinds of liabilities. We get non-current liabilities, and we get our current liabilities. Non-current and our current liabilities. Under your non-current liabilities, under non-current, which is your long-term liabilities, there we will have our loan. So we will have a mortgage loan there. And the loan amounted to 450,000 Rand. So we've got a loan there of 450,000 Rand. You block that, since that is the only amount of non-current liabilities. So your non-current liabilities in total is the amount of 450,000 Rand. We take a look at our current liabilities now. And your current liabilities will consist of trade and other payables. So you will list this as your trade and other payables. And your trade and other payables at this stage consist only of your trade payables, which is the amount of 33,000 Rand. You block that. Your current liabilities in total is now 33,000 Rand. And the bottom section of your statement of financial position, here we want to know what is the total equity and liabilities. Total equity and liabilities. Your total equity and liabilities will now therefore consist of your equity, which is the amount of 311,800, plus your non-current liabilities of 450,000, plus your current liabilities of 33,000 Rand, and that will give you a total of 794,800 Rand, which you will indicate then as the bottom section, the answer for the bottom section. And in your statement, you can now see that you have proven that your assets, which is the top part, was equal to your bottom part there, the 794,800 Rand. Right, students, that will explain or conclude our session then for today. Just to summarize this, in today's section, we have only focused on the formats. We are only working with the formats of your statement of financial position, statement of profit and loss and other comprehensive income, and the statement of changes in equity. In our next session, and this is also for Ursula, in our next session, we will have more questions and solutions and questions on adjustments and financial statements that we are going to work through. I will suggest that in the what will lead up to the sessions that is still coming, that you go through these financial statements and try to memorize the format for all of these different kinds of statements. Right, guys, just a reminder once again to complete the feedback form, and then you will be invited to our next session. And in our next session, we will then work through our financial statements and financial statements again. But then we're going to take a look at additional information and the adjustments, and we will see how the additional information will impact then on your financial statements. Okay, enjoy the rest of the afternoon. See you guys again. Just for those of you like Janine, those of you that is asking about next weekend, we were supposed to have a session next weekend, but many of the students are saying that they are going to take the long weekend. We know it's not supposed to be a long weekend because the public holiday is only on the Thursday, and the Friday should be a normal weekday, and the Saturday also a normal day. However, many students has booked already for the entire long weekend, taking off the Friday, and then they will be on holiday for the Thursday, the Friday, and the Saturday and the Sunday. And based on that, we have decided not to have a class next week. So there won't be any classes next week, and we will continue again then the following Saturday. It is also possible, guys, because we haven't got enough Saturdays to conclude before the actual exams are starting. So we may have some Friday night classes again. We had one Friday night class that was very, very successful. Remember, if you can't sit into the class, you can still download and watch the video then whenever you've got time. It is just that between now and exam time, there's not many days left, and there may not be enough Saturdays left for us to conclude with all the classes that I want to do. So it may be that we are going to have another Friday class. Just check your mails, guys, to see whether you will be invited and have information then on our next session, which I think is going to be on a Saturday, but it may be the Friday as well. All right, Janine is happy with that.